The Book of Honey, by Isadora Rochas, Chapter 14, Mutual Confessions, August 15, 2030, 5:25 p.m. William, I hang up on wood, and take a breather, looking at Honey. She is dressed in a pink and black striped cut hoodie, shorts, arm warmers, covered in scratches and with a bandage made of duct tape on her thigh. She's drenched and covered in dirt, blood, and glass. She is staring out the window. Something about her looking away from me was making me feel lonely. I've always been lonely, but not when I've been with her. I asked her, "Are you all right, honey?" She turns to look at me from under the hood. Answering me simply, she says, "Yes, William, I am." Her tone was quiet and sounded a bit tired to me. I asked, "Will you tell me what happened?" She lets out a sigh and lowers her head to look at her hands. She nods and says, "Dr. Maylida and I went shopping. We were fully covered, and she changed up my look to make me seem more civilian. We walked around for a few hours. Everything was fine. I kept my eyes out. We stopped to grab a bite to eat. I made sure we sat in the shade with our backs to the crowds and our faces to the wall. I checked his phone's GPS to see when he spotted me. It was when we were eating. I had a feeling someone was following. I couldn't spot him. He kept his distance and took his time. My best guess was that he hadn't determined it was me yet. We ended up at a hardware store. I looked at Honey and asked, "A hardware store?" "Yeah, I asked Dr. Maylida if I could pick up some stuff." She drove as close to the street as she could. We walked around piling stuff into my cart. I went to check out, she went to get the car. The storm started coming in. My skin started feeling itchy and tingly. The heavy feeling was back. I scanned the crowd, and my eyes went to an alley 2 or 3 streets up. He was standing there, staring me down. I asked her, "Did you know him?" She tells me, "Yes, I hadn't seen him for some time. He called himself JJSTYX. He was a trainer like Manford and me. A pretty, mean boy that she had picked up in Spain. I never liked him. He made passes, and when I kicked his ass, his revenge was to beat on my kids whenever he got the chance." There was a pause as we stopped. Traffic was thick right now with school letting out. Honey removes her hood, revealing pink and black hair braided in a fishbone pattern. Honey's eyes looked at me. It had been some time since I'd seen her face this close. Her eyes were amber like gold. But the dark circles were still there. Even though she seemed emotionless. There is a weariness in Honey's eyes that says she was more than bone tired. In the gold of her eyes a rage that was bottomless. In a flash, it was there and gone. She takes a breath and lets the emotion disappear from her face. Loosening herself up to keeping what's on her mind all to herself. For a second, I thought about my anger. I tried to always keep my temper in check. It would never do to lose it in front of a diplomat or snap at all the little moronic things people have to say. It's much less effort to ignore them as they come at me. I do my best to act like nothing gets to me. Even I have snapping points. It made me hot and out of control. The way Honey tells it, it makes her cold and focused. It was a focus that drove Honey to be relentless and calculating. She pauses and goes on. His biggest problem was he liked little girls. That made my anger flare up at hearing such a thing. Honey was talking to me freely and I wouldn't dare interrupt that. My reaction didn't faze her as she tells me. I told my kids to stick together. Days I wasn't there, and Manford kept his eye on me. There was nothing I could do. Kip was 10 when I came back from my fight. She was broken. I did what I could for her, but the more I thought about it, the more pissed off it made me. So, the next day, I had worked out a plan. I beat the absolute living shit out of him. Then I broke that piece of trash in front of everyone so none of them would ever lay their filthy hands on my kids ever again. I climbed the high bar in the courtyard, till someone knocked me down and I got beat and put in a dirty sewer hole for 10 days. It was worth it until I got back to find Kip was gone, and it all meant nothing. I couldn't do a damn thing for her. JJ had disappeared from the training yards and fighters circle. It's been more than 2 years now. Guess he's still holding a grudge. I don't know what to say about this. It was the most revealing thing she had ever said to me. Almost 9 months that I have known Honey. Most of our contact happened behind screens. Since the first time I'd seen our first couple of meetings, she is taller and thinner than the last time I'd seen her. I can't even imagine the stress she has been under. Between maintaining her cover, fighting, and organizing more than a couple dozen people in her group of fighters. Our communications were always about intel and work-related matters. But every once in a while, I would try to bridge the distance between us. So, she didn't feel alone. She never responded often to these messages, but once in a while, I would get a smart comment or a one-word jab. That was me figuring that if she still had a sense of humor, there was still hope. When I heard she had been attacked, I was afraid. Just like when she had jumped off the bridge right in front of me, I wanted to know that she was safe. To see with my own eyes. As disturbing as the things she was saying were, I wanted her to keep talking. Knowing that she is alive and well puts me at ease. So, I ask Honey, how did you break him? Honey is silent for a long moment, staring at me. When she says to me, William, I will say he's not the man he used to be. That was all the warning I needed to not pry. She tells me the rest of what happened down the alley. Then she sits in the sounds of traffic. I'm looking at her when a thought crosses my mind and I say what I'm thinking. You know, you never cease to amaze me. She looks at me very leerily. When Honey says, really? I nod and say, yes, I have never met someone like you. I didn't think about it like I know I should have. In an unfiltered moment, I held out my hand between us. She looked at it for a moment, then back at me like she was making up her mind. My heart beats just a little bit faster when Honey removed her drenched arm warmers and laced her fingers in mine. Once she rests her hand in mine for a moment, Honey looked at me for a time, then at the hands between us. When nothing seemed to happen, she sighed, sitting there silently looking forward. I could see a twitch of a grin form at the corner of her mouth. She looked at me with that grin. I'm not going to lie, my heart skipped a beat. When Honey quietly but boldly asked me, so, William, does this mean that you like me? I too was grinning to myself. Yes, because I would be a liar if I said I didn't. Does it bother you, Honey? She looked at me with those amber eyes like she was searching for something. Just like before, I couldn't tell what she wanted. She gives me a one-word answer. No. Does it seem like it's come from nowhere? Honey seemed to be taking her time answering me. She tells me, I was never expecting something like this with you, William. That is for sure. Once I thought about it, I like you too. I asked Honey, when did you think about it? She answers me, oh, a few times on my own on the inside. While I was sick in the clinic. The time we ate at Maggie's place. Despite how I was feeling and my doubts. It was probably the nicest thing that's happened to me in a while. It eased the way for me to work with you. I liked working with you, William. Despite my early assessment of your skills and accomplishments, you didn't disappoint me. That is the best compliment I can give. There were a few issues. Nothing that caused me to make corrections or put me at risk any more than I was already. I liked where this was going. I don't know if this is because of her injuries or about to be reprimanded by Beck, which is never a pleasant thing. Honey was answering questions for the first time, not just telling me how things are. So, I go on as boldly as I can to Honey. How could I not? You've been on my mind for the last 8 months. The more I read, the more I was fascinated by how your mind works. How you got in and out of places. Working with you and trying to figure out how you think was maddening, Honey. The way you organized it. Don't get me started about your messaging system. Borderlines between madness and genius. Believe me, the comparison is indistinguishable. Honey was laughing and smiling. It was a very nice smile. It made her look lighter. William, that face you made at me as I pulled my clothes off on that bridge was priceless. Her cheer didn't last long as the smile slipped from her face. I didn't like the feeling it gave me to see her put a stopper on her emotions like that. Honey tells me, William, I don't know how much more than this I can handle. She points at our hands. Then I say as sincerely as I can, if you don't want this, I will understand, just say so. Honey nods. She is quiet for a moment. But then she says, I think I do want this, William. Does this mean you're going to be around? I nod. Yes, I am going to be around. Can I ask some things, William? Please do. Truth be told, I don't know what to think about this right now. I didn't expect to say what I have or for you to be on the same page as me. Honey asked me, what were you expecting, William? I told her, for you to tell me to shove off, then I'd get on with it and it would be done. She smiled and says to me, William, is there anything about this that might bother you? I do say the most obvious thing first. Well, there is a sizable gap in our ages. Honey says, that's not a problem for me, William. The way you treat me is what matters. Do you have a problem with our age gap? I think about that for a moment. Maybe I should, but I don't. I can't see you as someone your age. I never have. We both look at each other. Honey nods. That makes a lot of sense, seeing as I don't see myself as someone my age either. I often forget when I'm working how old I am. My age has never stopped me from doing what I have to, and being what I am. This time I nod. I know that about you, Honey. I don't even know if it's alright for me to have feelings like this for you. I can't stop thinking about you, Honey. There is more silence for a time. When Honey says to me, I understand your concerns, William. I don't want to be a problem for you. I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're feeling toward me. That would be the same as telling myself that what I'm feeling is wrong. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. I turn that thought over in my head. It was a very deep thought. It had me feeling like this moment is happening in slow motion. Taking my time to respond to Honey seemed like the most important thing in the world. I tell her, this is a discovery for both of us. Not in a million years am I in any hurry to push you to a place that you do not want to be. We are both young and I have plenty of room left for growing. Besides, I think helping you stand on your own is something that needs time. I would like to be whatever kind of support you might need. Honey nods. That means a lot to me, William. There is a slight pause before Honey says, when I punched you the other day, I did it because you didn't ask or warn me, William. I forgave you because you were worried about me. It's super important that you always at this point ask. My reflex at being grabbed is to get away. Letting me be the one to approach would be for the best. If you can't help yourself or it's a dire moment, I will understand if you could give me a heads up. I tell her. You don't have to explain it to me unless you want to, honey. She tells me. I feel it's right to let you know. I don't seem to have a problem expressing my mood to you, no matter what it happens to be. Besides, working with you for the last 8 months has been interesting. I smile at her. I will do my best to remember, but you will have to be forgiving. I can be forgetful. She nods. That is all I can ask for. When I first met you, I thought you were shallow, William. I make a mocking gesture when I say to honey. Ow, that stings. She smiles again. I find I like making her smile, even if it is at my expense. Honey also keeps saying my name over and over. Like she's trying it on for size. I feel happy to hear her say it. She continued. I also said that what you see is not what you're going to get out of him. That I will have to wait and see how it goes. I ask, honey. If you figure it out, would you ever tell me? She smirks at me. Maybe. Looking at the road ahead of me, I say to her what I've been wanting to say to her for months. Now we're here and I can tell her with no concern about putting her in danger. I say without looking at her. I find it hard to look away as you pick up and drop possibilities. I truly admire the way you make your stand and fight. It makes me want to shut the hell up and work harder. You were doing sound spy work between beatings and caged fights. What do I have to complain about? I know she stares at me, but unlike before, I don't let it bother me, letting a long pause hang between us. Working with honey for so long now, I have learned that her silence always had a meaning. That it wasn't just there because she had nothing to say. But it had a reason even when I didn't always know what that meant. Honey finally releases me from it by saying, I don't see it that way. I didn't complain because I was being tough or strong. There was no reason to waste my time doing it. No one was listening, nobody cared, it just was, and I did what it took. May I ask you a question, honey? She tells me. Go ahead. I asked. What gave you that strength to keep standing? She paused for a minute when she looks at me. I'll show you. Honey unbuckles her belt, then spins to put her back to me. Then she starts pulling her shirts over her head. I surprisingly say, What are you doing? She sounded annoyed when she said, Cool your jets, William, I'm not taking off my clothes. Do you see the words on my back? Yes. Read them. I begin to read. When I fight for freedom, I know I always want it more. What is that from? Honey tells me. Those are my daddy's words. He had them tattooed on his back too. Whenever I entered that ring, or fought for my life, even doing spy work, my daddy comes with me wherever I go. He whispers in my mind just before the door opens. When you make your first move, don't let them see where it's coming from, and make a show out of every action you take. He is in every step I take as it came, and I am fighting for the same thing he did. It's what keeps me from the edge, it clears my mind and releases my worries. It makes every decision thoughtful and careful. I look at her back. There were slash marks, burns, and countless others. I reached my hand across but stopped myself just before. She puts down her shirt and then buckles up. This time she reached her hand out to me. Pointing to our hands, honey says to me, This is okay. I nod and say, That will be fine. At that moment traffic picked up. We rode to the clinic the rest of the way holding hands. It took me the rest of the ride to get my heart under control. We were in sight of the clinic, she released my hand. William, I would like you to not tell anyone we have made this kind of moment. I'd like to keep it to myself and explore it by ourselves. I tell Honey. I have no intention of saying a thing to anyone. I agree that taking our time would be for the best. Besides, you're going to be seeing more of me sooner than later. Honey asks me. What do you mean? I say to her. We will just have to see.